Okay, here number 2, we have a 10-year comparison between the US and the Soviet Union in terms of crop yields per acre. And what it revealed is that as far as crop yields per acre goes, let's make this the US. Let's say the US has 100 and Russia, Soviet Union, I guess it should be politically correct, so to speak here, and call it the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union had 68 per planted acre. Now what happens here is a twist. When you take the total, not just planted acre here, but when you take the total, which includes fallow land as well, then the Soviet Union has more. So let's go back to the US and let's say here that this bar represents fallow land. So if this is fallow land, what do we now notice about the US's crop yield? Well, it has quite a lot of fallow land. The more fallow land it has, the less the overall or the total, which is what we're looking for here, the total agricultural acreage. So let's kind of again play around with our own numbers here. And for fallow, let's just say it's 200. And again, putting in my numbers to make this less abstract. So we can see out of the total, the US has 100 over 300. So now, this is for the US, now for the total for the Soviet Union, we have, well, what? We know that it has to be greater. So this is 68 over some number. We know that when we divide it by a certain number, that it has to actually be a greater fraction. So here, US is 33%. They say Russia is about 114% greater. It's greater, so let's say 40%. If that is the case, to have us get some number here that's 40%, we would roughly have to get about 150. I mean, again, that's not exact math, but the concept here is what's important. You'll notice that the fallow land here is not going to be quite so big as it is with the US. We're actually subtracting the 2, so this is somewhere around 82. And I should draw that even much smaller around this point, because you can see that in terms of total acreage, Russia, the proportion to planted acres to fallow land, this proportion here is lower. That is, we have a greater percentage. But with the US, we have so much extra fallow land that when you take the proportion, even though it has more crops per planted acre, it actually becomes less. So, for instance, 33% versus 40%. And so that Russia has 114% versus the US is 100%. Again, it doesn't really have to be just 114%. The concept is any percent that is greater. So if Russia has a greater percent of its overall crops that are planted, therefore there has to be less that is fallow. So the US has more that is fallow, which is answer choice